If you're like us, you've watched many RV YouTube channels and their videos that talk about gadgets and tools and things that you might need when you decide to go full-time or even part-time RVing. Well, today we're going to talk about 7 skills that we feel are important for you to have if you're going to be a highly effective full-time RVer. You may already possess some of these skills, and some may not even be on your radar. So stay tuned as we talk about all 7 in no particular order. Welcome to Life Uninterrupted. I'm Brian.
And I'm Shauna. We left our corporate jobs, sold our home, got rid of all of our stuff to become full-time RVers. And what we like to say is that we traded our stuff for experiences.
So if this is the first time to our channel, Shauna and I have been full-time RVers for just a little over a year now, but we've been RVing for well over 20 years in all different kinds of rigs. We started out with a pop-up camper, and then we went to a hybrid camper that's more like a tow behind that has pop-up camper beds that kind of fold out, the tent camper type beds. Then we went to a toy hauler so we could haul the toys around for the kids and all of that. And then finally, when the kids were grown, we decided to again sell all of our stuff, go full-time RVing, and went into a Class A 35-foot motorhome. And that seems to fit us well for this phase of our lives.
Now that we've been on the road for a year, we've made mistakes along the way and we've had plenty of learning opportunities. So we have some sense of the characteristics that are needed for an effective full-time RV lifestyle. And we want to share those with you, especially if you're considering this type of lifestyle or are already in it, maybe struggling, or may just be looking for opportunities to improve. Without further ado, let's get into those 7 skills.
Okay, so the first skill we believe is super important, and again, these are in no particular order, but that's going to be flexibility. You really have to be open to last-minute changes. Your plans definitely are going to change, most likely multiple times in the course of a trip, no matter where it is you go.
Yeah.
You have to be flexible with your driving time. We try to limit our driving hours each travel day to 3 hours. That varies. Sometimes it can be less, sometimes it could be more, depending on traffic conditions. We have to go out of the way on a detour, whatever it might be. Conditions in terms of weather. Sometimes that plays a big factor. Many times we've had to pull over on the side of the road to wait a storm out. So
that happened to us a lot last summer, actually. Yes.
Yeah, things can change very quickly. So it's important to be flexible, remain flexible, and don't stress about the things that you can't control. So the next skill we feel that is really super important, and that is resourcefulness, because a lot of times you'll be out in the middle of nowhere, you may have a breakdown, you're gonna have to come up with some ideas to get you back on the road, at least temporarily, to get you someplace. I always like to use the example of when I was in the Air Force. We would have battle damage repair assessments. So we would take an aircraft that was out of commission, we would poke holes in it with sledgehammers or whatever it might be to simulate damage from either missiles or bullets or whatever the case may be. And we had to use whatever we had on hand. It could have been a pop can, quite literally. It could have been aluminum speed tape, baling wire, I'm not kidding you, duct tape, whatever it might be.
Duct tape.
Yeah, seriously. Whatever it might be to put that aircraft into flight-worthy status again, to get it out there to fight the bad guys. So I've really translated that training and that mentality to being on the road. Sometimes the repairs or the quick fixes aren't pretty, they're kind of ugly, they take some time. But hey, it's all about using what you have, the skills that you have in hand. If you don't have those skills, definitely want to acquire those resourcefulness skills and look at what you have on board on your rig that might be able to fix a problem temporarily to help get you down the road.
Absolutely. And another scenario that happens to us, or happened to us frequently, still does, is pulling into a campsite where it's completely unlevel, or we don't like the area, it seems a little sketchy.
First world problems.
Or it's too short, that type of thing. Yeah, definitely. This is pulling out all of your resources again that you would have. You have a limited amount of time, especially if you're trying to get somewhere before it gets dark. Right. Pull on your apps, get out your atlas, go on to your Facebook forums, whatever that might be that you use. Ask people, where is the nearest campsite that I can use? Something that's going to be helpful. But don't just rely on one source. Have all of those at your disposal. We use Campendium, Allstays, several different apps to help us should we find ourselves in that type of situation.
So number 3 is organization. Living in a small rig, super important. Being on the go all the time, super important. So there are really two parts to this, to organization. And I think the first one, at least for me, is to create a routine. Do things the same way each and every time so that you don't forget to do something. Here's an example. Many of you know that I'm a pilot, and in pilot training we learn two ways to do things, and that is what's called rote memory. In other words, we just do things based on doing that certain task over and over and over again.
It's almost like a habit.
Repetition, right? It becomes a habit. So in an emergency situation, you do those really important things first. And then once you have time to take a breath, you go through a checklist and follow up with those lesser important things. Still important, but less important than, fixing the emergency. So I use that same mentality on the road. I have a checklist for setup and tear down, and quite a few other things as well, but primarily setup and tear down. But I really try to do things the same way every time. When we set up or we tear down to go someplace, I'll walk the rig in the same fashion. I'll look at things the same way each and every time. So that gives me peace of mind to know that I've covered all those things.
Right. And then secondarily would be a place for everything and everything in its place as far as organization goes. When you're living in a small space, as you are in an RV, even a small amount of clutter can really add up. So we try to put things away in bins, in cupboards. That way when we're moving through the RV, we're not stepping on things, we're not falling over things, and it just helps create a larger space when you've got your stuff put away. So organization, I believe, is very key.
A couple of things about organization, especially the way I organize our bins, the external bins where I keep all of our gear and tools and things. So let's say you're going down the road, you're in the right-hand lane, you have an emergency and you have to pull off the right shoulder. I always make sure that I keep any important tools, any tape, straps, whatever it might be, on that side of the rig so that I don't have to go to the other side of the rig with cars whizzing by trying to get stuff out of those left-hand bins. All that stuff is always in the right-hand side.
That is super important. That's right. And that's happened to us.
Yeah, in South Dakota, perfect example.
We learned a lesson on that one, but it's been super helpful. And then how do you keep all of your tools arranged?
Yeah, so one thing I did before we left our home in Arizona is I bought a bunch of bins from, I think it was Home Depot or Lowe's, I don't remember. And they have the self-closing lids on them, which was important. I didn't want to have just those lids that kind of snap on and snap off. Anyway, I keep all of my gear in those. I used a label maker to label every one of the bins so that I know what is in there. And after a while, well, one thing I mentioned earlier, you make sure you put those back in the same place every time. That way when you go to get them or use something out of them, you know exactly which bin they're in, and saves a ton of time.
It really does. And you've not only labeled the bins outside, but even inside our coach, he's labeled bins, which is really nice. We know where all of our batteries are located, all of our extra electronic cords and all of that.
Gear.
So, we're not having to rummage through everything. And it's been a really nice
just saves time and headache.
Number 4 is a close second to flexibility, and this one is adaptability. And this is being able to change your mindset, your attitude, your actions, your habits to suit your environment or your particular state of being. Adaptability really comes into play when you move from a 3,400 square foot home to a 200 plus square foot RV. You learn to move differently. You can't stand in the kitchen and check your phone while someone's trying to make breakfast.
I do that a lot.
If you bring pets on board or children, all of you have to kind of adapt and learn to, as I said, move within that smaller space. So that's a huge one for adaptability. Early on for us, especially when we started out in May, June, we were not expecting to run into the storms that we ran into, especially tornado warnings. So that was something that we had to adapt to very quickly. We put a plan in place. We prepared a go-to bag. Is it called a go-to bag? Go bag.
A go bag.
Yeah. And
we go to it to go.
We do, and it's just something now that is second nature to us. And one last example for us, not having stayed at many Walmarts or truck stops, we weren't prepared for the noise and some of those very bright street lights that are right above our rig. So we purchased eye masks, earplugs, and now we're prepared for that sort of thing. And sometimes you just have to stay in those locations when you're traveling down the road. So. Yeah,
and just like Shauna said, you have to be okay with, especially in a truck stop, you know, that truck idling next to you all night long. You just, over time, you adapt to that, and it's just like anything else. You kind of don't hear it. We do use, on occasion, though, a white noise generator, which helps drown out some of that stuff.
Definitely.
So it definitely helps.
And we've pulled in many times in a truck stop or a Walmart, and it's been very quiet. Lo and behold, we do have a big truck that pulls in next to us and runs its generator all night. So
Yeah.
it's just learning to adapt.
Skill number 5, and I feel this is super important, maybe even more important than being resourceful, and that is learning to be handy. Basically, you want to learn how to maintain every system in your rig. You want to learn how to not only maintain those and keep those in good repair, but how to fix those, how to fix a clogged toilet, how to change the oil in your rig if it's a gas or diesel pusher like ours. If you have a tow vehicle, learn how to maintain the systems on that. Change your oil, repair a flat tire, for instance. I have a plug kit. I can repair a flat tire on the fly to get us through to an emergency place to get it changed. You know, in order to maintain your rig, you don't have to have a huge tool set on board. You can have a basic mechanics tool set. Those work just fine. One important thing to have also, a lot of rigs, a lot of manufacturers use what's called a Robinson head screw, and that's a little screw head, a square screw head. I'll show you that picture and give you a link to those. Super important to have, because if you need to tighten those screws, you don't have that Robinson bit, you're going to be SOL. Anyway, the point to all of this is really just have a basic understanding of your rig, know how to make those basic repairs and maintain your system so that you don't have to rely so much on having somebody do that for you. What that does, saves you time, saves you a ton of money.
Yeah, and heartache along the way.
This is true.
Yes.
Something happens on the side of the road or at a campground, which is where they're most likely going to happen, you can at least get something repaired temporarily to get you out of there into maybe a larger city that has more economical repair services, for sure.
And highly recommended if you have a travel partner, that travel partner also knows some basic maintenance and repair that'll help keep you going down the road in case of an emergency.
Yep.
Number 6 is a biggie, and that is keeping perspective, also known as having a sense of humor at times.
Don't sweat the small stuff, because it really is, in the scheme of things, just small stuff.
That's right, and this too shall pass.
Yeah.
You may be at a crummy RV park tonight, but just think tomorrow you're going to be in a beautiful, beautiful location in your destination. Your vehicle may break down. You have to have it towed. Thankfully, you may have roadside assistance or your insurance can cover it. Try to think of the positive in any situation and remember why you embarked on this lifestyle. Remember the freedom that you have, but keeping a perspective in all things will help with your relationship. It'll help with your mood and your attitude, and will probably get you back on the road and moving along much quicker.
All right, last but not least, number 7. Perhaps the biggest of the 7 skills.
I have to say, it's probably one that they're wondering, like, why haven't you included this one?
Yeah.
Can you guess what it is?
Patience.
Patience.
So
exactly.
You're going to be tried every single time you step foot outside your door.
Well, that's better. I was going to say every day. Yeah.
Every single time you step out of your rig, you're going to be tried. Your patience is going to be put on test, and you know how you react. We talked a little bit earlier about flexibility, adaptability, all those things, and how you react to things, and how little patience or how much patience you have will certainly either make or break your day.
Yeah, I mean, we could name a gazillion different situations that I know you're going to encounter if you haven't already. And one of mine that just drives me crazy is when we pull into a gas station and we typically have to use the outer pump, you know, just for height and width. And there will be someone who is in the store doing their shopping and not in their vehicle, and we have to wait and wait. But
happens all the time.
Try and
sure
maintain,
happens to you.
Yes, try to maintain your patience. It's going to happen. It's going to happen constantly. Again, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. But patience is a biggie.
Yeah, so another big thing, we don't really have to worry about it too much since we got rid of our black tank and our sewage system. We have the composting toilet, but that is waiting in line to dump sewer. Some people are faster. Most people are slower in our experience. Some people take their time. Some people make a mess. I mean, most people don't, but you know, just have patience. Those people, that may be their first time out in their rig. You don't know. Or they may have a disability of some sort that makes them move a little bit more slowly, but just have some grace and allow them to do their thing. Be patient, and hey, what else are you going to do anyway, right? This is the life we've chosen to live, and you know, these things come with it. So.
Yes, they do, exactly. And what we tend to do is when we're stopped and waiting for something like that, I'll try and make a snack or something to try and ease the time that we're waiting. But that's a big one.
You know, another thing that Shauna and I have begun practicing, and that is better communication, especially when we're pulling in or pulling out of a spot. Even when we're going down the road, if we decide not to hook up our tow vehicle, Shauna will always have a walkie-talkie in the Jeep. I'll have one in the rig. It goes a long way to be able to communicate pretty quickly. A lot of people say, hey, we have cell phones these days. Why not just use your cell phone? Well, we've been in many situations where we haven't had cell phone coverage, especially up in the mountains, away from everything, and you just can't communicate. So,
well, another thing that happens with our cell phones, we're too close, so we get interference.
Right. There'll be some feedback.
Yeah, so walkie-talkies are the way to go.
Yeah, it goes a long way to save your nerves, especially when, like I said, you're trying to get in and out of a tight spot, perhaps. So yeah.
And again, just show grace to your partner. It's not easy backing in, I'm sure, and dodging branches and boulders and all kinds of things. And it's not easy for the person on the other end trying to guide you. So have patience.
Yeah, patience with your partner. At the end of the day, I mean, you probably have to sleep with that person in pretty tight quarters. So,
right.
You want to be kind.
And I know that we didn't share these 7 in any particular order, but if I had to name one that should be number 1 front and center, that would be patience.
Yeah. Well, I think at least hopefully we've imparted some knowledge upon you to help you, gain a skill set. Like I said earlier, maybe you have these skills, maybe they haven't been on your radar, so hopefully this has helped you out. I think that's going to wrap it up for this. Thanks for tuning in this week. If you would, leave some comments down below. Perhaps one of these skills that you've mastered, maybe some of the skills you haven't mastered, some things you need to improve upon, or maybe there's a skill that you think that we perhaps left out that's more important than any of these other skills.
It's very possible. If you haven't already, we would love to have you subscribe and join our Lou crew.
Yep.
Hit that notification bell, and then you'll know every time that we launch a video.
That's right.
And as Brian mentioned, leave any comments down below. We'd love to read those and respond.
Like we say, we respond to every single comment that we want to. Until next time,
We'll see ya.